Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're all having a pleasant evening, and I hope you will be having one for the next, I don't know, how long do we usually do this? An hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. I hope however long, I hope however long we end up doing this, it will be pleasant for you. So, as always, and hi, everybody in the live chat. I'm about to start ignoring you, so I just want to say hello from the beginning. Um, as always, I'm going to start by answering questions that were submitted early by my Patreon patrons and my channel members. So, if you are with us in the live chat right now and you have a question or you were planning on being generous and giving me a super chat or anything like that, or anything you want me to talk about, or any chat message you want me to notice, hold on to it until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I'll be paying full attention to the live chat. So let's start with the pre-submitted questions from my Patreon patrons and my channel members. And the first one is from Carlisle the Cinephile, who says, "Hello, Steve. Recently, I played through Telltale Games' Batman series, and it's one of the most unique depictions of his mythos I've seen. In case you don't know, the series is a point and click adventure game where choices you make affect the narrative, and your choices can have some pretty intriguing impacts on very popular characters. For instance, you can determine whether Harvey Dent ends up being disfigured, and can even determine whether the Joker becomes the classic supervillain we all know, or if he becomes a twisted vigilante with a warped sense of justice. In addition to this, there are other changes, like the fact that the Waynes were secretly corrupt criminals, a fact Bruce has to come to terms with, and that Vicky Vale turns out to be evil. Do you think radical departures from the established mythos like this can work? And would you ever check these games out? I know you're not much of a gamer, but I felt like if you ever wanted to, you'd get a kick out of this series." Yeah, I'm not much of a gamer, so I won't say for sure that I'll never check them out. And that sounds familiar. I think uh, it's been suggested to me before that they've been noticed, or they've been mentioned before. So I don't. I don't know if I'll ever play them or not, but I've heard them mentioned before. But That does sound interesting. And the idea of, do I think radical departures like that can work? Yes, of course. As most people know who watch my Star Trek stuff, I am not overly attached or attached very much at all uh to the concept of canon. And certainly not to the point where it would I think it should stop anybody from telling a story that they really want to tell, you know. So if someone wanted, I actually think, I can't remember if Dana and I have discussed this on a video before or not, but I know Dana and I, when we've talked about Batman in private, um we've talked about the idea of the Waynes being something other than the sort of paragons of virtue that they are usually depicted as. I don't know if we necessarily said that they would be crime bosses, but just that idea of, Bruce idolizes his parents, but there are things about them he doesn't know, and maybe they weren't such great people after all. Maybe they weren't saints, right? I think that's a terrific idea. I think the idea of playing around with the different villains, seeing what would happen if Harvey Dent had not become Two Face, twisting the Joker around a little bit to try some different things. As long as there's a good story in it, that's my number one priority. That's my number one question: is what's the story? Where's the story? Right? Um, a lot of times in these questions, for ask away, like, people will say, "Hey, what about a Star Trek series that's boom?" And they're describing a premise, or they're describing, even not even a premise, just, what about a show set in this place? What about a show about, and I usually am very non-committal with that sort of thing, because you're not telling me a story. What's the story? What's it about? I don't care about the setting. I don't care about world building. I don't care about canon if there's not a story at the center of it that I can get my hooks into. And if you can tell a great story where Vicky Vale turns out to be evil, if you can tell a great story where the Waynes turn out to be criminals, if you can tell a great story where Harvey Dent never becomes Two-Face, or anything else that is a departure from the more traditional mainstream Batman mythos or the mainstream storyline of any other long running property. I'm all for it. Tell me a good story. That's literally the most important thing to me. Anything else is negotiable if you can tell me a good story. So yeah, I think it could work for sure. It could, yes, absolutely. It just depends on the storytelling. Stephen G. Clenard says, Steve, you're a DC Comics guy. Maybe you can help me with some questions that have been vexing me for some time. Should superhero sidekicks form their own union? What are some demands they could collectively bargain for? I think they should have sole ownership of their names, likenesses, and catchphrases. Never again, Batman, never again. Speaking of which, do you think this would make a good premise for Silver Age heroes? Catchphrase Girl and Banter Boy, special guest sidekicks that show up in the nick of time to help superheroes that are struggling with their verbal sparring. I think they would become fan favorites. Thoughts? I really like that idea. I kind of think instead of having them be characters, instead of Catchphrase Girl and Banter Boy, maybe they could be mascots, and it could be like a service that operates. It's like a business that superheroes hire from time to time to help coach them with their banter, or to, you know how like sometimes comedians will buy jokes from other comedians, right? Or comedians will sell jokes to more famous comics or stuff like that. Like um, or even just like writers pitching a story. That kind of thing. There could be that kind of marketplace in the superhero world for banter, for one-liners, or for catchphrases, or for funny, clever names for their cars or their equipment or their base of operations or whatever. There could be like a superhero quip catchphrase branding like consulting firm that superheroes can hire out and work with to establish these different little tropes that are associated with them. And Catchphrase Girl and Banter Boy could be like mascots associated with that. I think that's a really clever idea. But yeah, it's a really funny idea. And yeah, what could superhero sidekicks bargain for if they had their own union? I like the idea of ownership of their names. That's always a good thing. And their associated intellectual property. I like that. Maybe the guarantee of a certain number of solo adventures per year, so that if Robin has in his contract with Batman that yes, he'll be Batman's partner, he'll go out on adventures with Batman, but so many times a year he needs to be able to go out and do his own thing and just be Robin, uh, something like that I think could work too, and would keep them sidekicks, but would also, address that tension between the hero and the sidekick, where the sidekick is like, but I could be my own hero. I don't need to just be this guy's sidekick. I think there's some potential there. Next question from David Colby. In just a few months, after years of waiting, some new Homeworld content is coming out. Homeworld is a cult classic video game from the 1990s that I've been a rabid fan of since the 1990s, but it got me thinking. Part of why Homeworld has remained so exceptional, in my opinion, is that it only really has a few pieces of writing in the property, and 90% of it is really good. Meanwhile, Star Trek has way, 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 way more content, but that means there's more room for episodes where Archer commits genocide or Janeway turns into a lizard. Would you take less Star Trek in exchange for only the good episodes? Because, man, I really desperately want more Homeworld. Also, fun fact, both Homeworld and Star Trek's best villain are quasi-organic cybernetic beings that assimilate the ships and minds of others to spread themselves across the cosmos, except the Beast is fought by the equivalent to crew of the Nostromo instead of the Enterprise, so it's way scarier than when the Borg show up. That's interesting. I don't think I would make that trade-off in the case of Star Trek, and part of that is because by the time I grew into my Star Trek fandom. I started watching Star Trek when I was a little kid, but I don't think I was really like hooked and Star Trek fan for life until midway through TNG. Right? I mean, I liked Star Trek. I liked the old show. I liked the movies particularly. But it wasn't until 3 or 4 seasons into TNG when I really felt like, okay, this is like my thing. So there was already a lot of it. I mean, there's way more of it now than there was then. But even then, we're talking, 3 seasons of the original TV show, 5 or 6 movies, and then 3 or 4 seasons of the spinoff of TNG. So there was already, and plus the animated series, um, which I don't think I had really seen at that point, but still it was out there. So there was already a lot of Star Trek, even though there's way more now. So it's always been kind of part of the nature of it. And one of the ways that I used to differentiate Star Trek from Star Wars was that there was just way more Star Trek. And now Star Wars, especially since the Disney purchase of Lucasfilm, Star Wars has gone in more of a Star Trek direction and has greatly expanded its output. It used to be Star Wars was 3 movies and then like the weird little side projects. That's something that a lot of people liked, but weren't really essential viewing. You know, and now Star Wars is all the mainline movies of the 3 trilogies, plus the big live action spin-off movies like Rogue One, um, and plus the Mandalorian, and then the animated stuff, which I don't really get into, but a lot of people really are excited for. So Star Wars has kind of expanded since I was a kid, but when I was a kid, Star Wars was 3 movies. And so I would have been more likely to say I would rather just keep the good stuff with Star Wars than I would with Star Trek, because by the time I got into Star Trek, that was just the nature of the beast. You know, I mean, it was what it was. There was a whole bunch of it, and some of it was great, some of it was, but I wouldn't have wanted to get rid of any of it. And another thing is, there is some good stuff buried in a lot of the bad Star Trek. Like Star Trek 5 is not a good movie, but there are isolated moments in Star Trek 5 that are absolutely wonderful. Even in my like Star Trek Nemesis, my least favorite Star Trek movie by far, there are nice moments in there. I don't know if I would want the final goodbye between Picard and Riker to just not exist, because we wouldn't do that movie. They get rid of that movie because it's a shitty movie. But the farewell scene between Picard and Riker, especially for someone who was already a fan and had been watching the franchise up to that point and knew the history between these two characters, when Riker, who has finally been promoted to captain, comes into Picard's ready room one last time and says goodbye and says, "It's been an honor serving with you," and they shake hands and part company. That moment is a great moment. It's a shitty movie, but that moment is a great moment. And there's stuff like that in a lot of the lesser Star Trek that I don't know if I would necessarily want to do without. And plus, I'm just not that precious about it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of shitty Star Trek, but who cares? There's a lot of good Star Trek too. Like, it's not part of I think what makes Star Trek a good thing to be a fan of is that you have to sort of take the good with the bad, and you can't really be too precious about it. You can't I mean, I guess you could treat it like holy scripture, but it just doesn't make sense to me. There's a lot of it that's just really goofy and bad and shitty, and there's a lot of it that is absolutely wonderful, and it's all in the same pot. And you can be a fan of all of it, and you can acknowledge the shittiness, and you can also celebrate the greatness, and it's all one thing. And you can't get too cocky about it, because as good as it is, it's also pretty terrible sometimes. So no, I wouldn't. I would rather have all of it than pick out just the best parts of it. I don't think I would take that trade. General Contact Unit Problem Child. If the state makes things too terrible for the people, one of 3 things can happen. A, peaceful democratic change. B, the leaders of the state can do nothing until the people remove them in a revolution. C, the leaders can prevent either A or B by turning to authoritarian fascist tactics to keep themselves in power without popular support. But this will be unstable and won't last. You said you don't get why people think the government allowing millions of people to become homeless would be good for the left in the long run. I thought I'd lay out the basic argument to get your response. 2, once when I was 9, I was on vacation in Spain. The room's TV only got a few English channels, and to my irritation, my parents only wanted to use them to watch some news story about stuff going on in a desert. This was the mobilization for the Iraq War. Do you have any childhood memories like that? Important world events unfolding, but you not understanding or particularly caring because you were too young. Um, yeah, and I guess the idea of the millions of homeless people, because they are in such dire straits, they would be more. I think you mentioned it in the previous show. Like they would be more likely to fight in the revolution. I mean, I get the argument. I understand now that you say that, and I think about it in those terms. I guess I can say now I understand why some people would think that. Why some people would think that is a good thing, but as I think most people who watch me and know me could guess, I take a very dim view of arguments like that. I take a very, very dim view of people on the left or the right, by the way, um, who say, well, if things get really, really terrible, that might actually be a good thing because it'll be easier to recruit for our revolution. I'm not a big fan of strategy or not even strategy, just like hoping that things will get really, really bad because that'll be good for recruitment for the revolution. I think that's a really shitty argument and a really shitty attitude, um, and a really privileged attitude. And because what about the people who are just, what about the people who will just die? What about the people who become homeless and don't join the revolution to fight for freedom or whatever you think they're going to fight for? What about the people who just starve to death? What about them? But at least you got a few more soldiers for your revolution, right? So I take a dim view of that. But when you explain it like that, I do understand why it might make sense from that point of view. So thank you for laying that out. Um, I don't see with the Iraq War. I was too old by the time the first. But well, it depends on what Iraq War. I'm not sure what our age difference is. I was 11, or no, I was 10, almost 11 when the first Iraq War broke out in 1990, early 1991. So I was already old enough to sort of be able to perceive what was going on. And then I was in my early 20s when the most recent Iraq War broke out. So that wasn't that kind of a situation either. I don't remember. I know in the early 80s, I remember a lot of talk in my house about Beirut that I was not particularly interested in or aware of or capable of processing. So I would say maybe that. But I don't really have any strong memories of it, you know. And I remember in 1986 when the Challenger exploded, I was already interested in the space program, so I cared very much about that. Um, so that wasn't that kind of a situation, but that was probably the first like major world or national news event that I was aware of and was interested in following and knowing what happened and caring about was the Challenger explosion. So that was not an example of what you're talking about. But yeah, I'm not sure. Probably some military thing that happened in the early 80s. Um, Andrew Priest. Hi, Steve. This question really isn't a fun one. I won't be offended if you don't read this out, but if you do, please could you put up a trigger warning for suicide and sexual assault? So there you go, everybody. If you want to mute your live stream for the next couple of minutes or watch something else or, just come back to this later, the question is going to do with suicide and sexual assault. So if that's not something that you want to hear me talk about, there you go. Please consider yourself advised. Um, some colleagues and I have been in disagreement about suicide after a patient killed herself during a rape kit. Some think her body, her choice. Only she knew if she could overcome it. Maybe death felt like the one thing still in her control. Utter bullshit. Suicidal thoughts are an illness that need treatment. Help them develop coping mechanisms, goals to achieve, whatever. Death just spreads misery, pain, and grief. Life's always better than death. And if that means being institutionalized, hindering their freedom to save their life, that's what needs to be done. Letting someone die lets lazy people avoid putting in the effort to help someone else. When someone takes their own life, society as a whole has failed them and their family. Told you it wasn't a fun one. What do you and the chat think? Well, I'm sure the chat will have lots to say about this one. I think, in theory, I mostly agree with you. But I want to acknowledge what a complex and difficult situation this is. I agree with, from my very privileged perspective. I agree with you that life is better than death. And I agree with you that means should be taken to save the life of a suicidal person, and that just because someone says I want to end my life, this is the only path for myself that I can see, that we don't necessarily have to take that at face value and just say, okay, sorry, go ahead and kill yourself. Like, but at the same time, I also believe that people have the right to make that decision for themselves. And that if you truly, truly believe that it's the right thing for you to do to end your life, then you should have that right. and that if you want or need someone to assist you in doing that, and they agree to assist you, that should not be a crime. The problem is there's a lot of gray area in between, you know, very, very depressed, very upset, at the end of their rope, but treatable person who maybe has suicidal thoughts and sincerely wants to kill themselves, but could be helped and brought back to a place where they don't feel that way anymore and they could go on to live a wonderful life. And people who are making who are making what is the right decision for them and should be allowed to kill themselves. Like, it's difficult for people outside of that, outside of their head, to know what the situation is. And I also have to acknowledge, as I mentioned a minute ago, I have to acknowledge how privileged I am in this scenario, because I have never felt that way. I've been sad in my life. I've been depressed in my life. I've had fleeting periods of hopelessness or being just really, really down and really just anguished, right? But I've never felt any kind of sustained hopelessness where I felt that my life would never get any better. If that I was at a low point and I felt like there would never be another peak. I've never felt that. I cannot relate to that personally. I have no idea what a person who is going through something like that feels like, because I've just never been there. I've never seriously felt like I wanted to kill myself or that I was going to kill myself. I've never been there. And I hope I never will be there, right? But so I can't relate to that. So it's very easy for me to say, well, life's always better than death. Even if you do have to go to extraordinary measures, even if you do have to curtail someone's freedom for a time in order to treat them, life is always better than death. I agree with you in principle, but it's very easy for me to say that because I've never been at that low point. So it's a really, really, I generally agree with you, but I think it's a super complicated situation. And I think people who are in that situation need to be treated with compassion and respect and understanding as much as possible. And as I think anybody who has worked with suicidal people or who has, in fact been in a situation themselves where they felt suicidal, I'm sure most people would agree with that it's a really fraught, complicated situation. You want to help people and not have people throw their lives away needlessly, but you also want to respect people's right to control their own life and to make what they think is the right choice for them. So it's tough. It's tough. And I mean, ultimately it sounds like kind of a cop-out answer, but it's difficult to know which side you should be on in any given situation because you don't know what is going on in someone's head, and you don't know what's going to happen to them in the future. Things could get way better for them, or things could remain bad or get worse. You don't know. So anyway, hope that is of some use or interest. Agent Meister, Paldor Joys, Steve, no serious questions this week, just random and inane observations I've made. For example, did you know that one of the aliens bidding for the Barzan wormhole in the TNG episode The Price was played by Kevin Peter Hall, the same KPH who portrayed Predator in the first two Predator movies? Also, how about a short trek where Morn introduces Martok to the world of interpretive dance? Quick, Steve, get me Kurtzman! And finally, a scenario that came to me while I was clipping my toenails. What would your reaction be if Jonathan Frakes turned up on your doorstep on your birthday and said, "Let's hang out. Can you please give us an approximation of the look on your face?" That's all for now. Steve, Agent Meister in Ireland, signing off. Sure faith and begosh and begorra. Isn't it a grand soft day, Your Honor? That's an Irish thing, I guess. I don't know what that means, but I apologize for my cultural ignorance. I did not know that about the same actor playing the Predator who played one of the bidders in the Price. That's really interesting. I did not know that. So thank you for sharing that. I think your Morn and Martok dancing short trek is a winner. You know what? Let me see if I've got Alex's number. I don't. Sorry. But if I did, I would definitely text him and I'd be like, I got a great idea for a short trek for you, Alex. It's gold. And as for your toenail clipping scenario, I would be thrilled. What would the look on my face be? I don't know, something like that. Maybe less scary, less psychotic. You know, my reaction would be, cool, where are we going? You know, or do you just want to come in and hang out? We can watch Star Trek. I'm sure he'd love that. I'm sure he's not sick of fucking Star Trek yet. But yeah, that would be great. If that happens, should I hide the Riker portrait on the wall, or should I like show it to him and be like, you know, hey, check it out, man, got Riker on the wall? Like, should I just, you know, shove it under the bed while he's here just in case he sees it? You know, because the bathroom's right there. So he could be like going in to take a piss and just glance through the doorway into the bedroom and see the Riker portrait and be like, oh shit, what have I got myself into? You know, I think I should probably take it down. I think that would be safer for everybody and less awkward for everybody. Yeah, I'll definitely take it down. But anyway, yeah, so next question from Danny K. Hey, Steve, is it possible that the reason why we don't see Starfleet officers go on leave after experiencing work-related trauma is doing so tends to cause vacation-related trauma? For example, Picard went on vacation and got stuck digging up weird treasure at gunpoint. O'Brien got put on trial on Cardassia as he was about to go on vacation. Bashir got kidnapped by Section 31 while heading off for a sunny resort. Granted, it was a work trip, but he was definitely going to get some beach time in. And LaForge got brainwashed by Romulans while on his way to Risa. Seems like these guys just can't win. Thank you very much. Hope all is well. Well, thank you. All is pretty well. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, that's something that I guess I could have mentioned it in my video, but number one, I didn't think of it. I kind of wish I had thought of it. I would have tried to work it in somehow, but that video was kind of long already. But yeah, there is the impression that ultimately it doesn't really matter whether Starfleet gives them time off or not, because whenever they do take vacations, some shit always ends up happening and it's not exactly restful. So there's really no escape. The Star Trek universe, for Starfleet officers at least, for protagonists of Star Trek shows anyway, is far bleaker than I gave it credit for in my video. There truly seems to be no escape from the relentless stress and pressure and threatening of life, you know, and need to rise to the occasion and do something heroic lest the galaxy fall to some evil, right? There's really no escape. There's no such thing as a vacation. If you are the protagonist in a Star Trek show, there's no such thing as vacation for you. You will never stop. You will have no rest. So yes, that's a good point. And I wish that I had thought of that, and I wish that I had at least brought something up about it and mentioned it in that video, because that's a great point. And of course, as with a lot of the other things that I mentioned in that video, it's a byproduct of the form. It's a byproduct of the fact that Star Trek is an action adventure show, and you're not, I mean, most episodes shouldn't be about the characters going to therapy or taking a nice relaxing vacation. We should be seeing stuff happen. Like there should be some stuff happening in the show. That's the show. So, I mean, even in, I guess the most restful episode was probably Family. There wasn't really a big action plot in Family. You know, but even that, like the Picard show, the Picard story in Family wound up with him and his brother having a fist fight. So there's a little bit of action in there. You know, it wasn't necessarily the most relaxing time off he could have taken, but you know, yeah. So that's a great point. That's a great point. Science Pundit. Hi, Steve. I've been thinking about Superman lately and got to wondering whether the Fortress of Solitude is merely a plot device to advance the Superman origin story, or if it has a place in the greater Superman canon. I'm guessing you would say that anything goes as long as it's a good story. See that? That's why that's not my question. Suppose Steve Shives has been commissioned to write a non-origin soup story that revolves around the Fortress of Solitude. What's your pitch? Thanks. A story that revolves around the Fortress of Solitude. I would probably have to dip into some Silver Age stuff, because the Silver Age is where they really threw in a lot of wacky details about the fortress. You know, that's where we had like Superman's robots and the bottled city of Kandor. And, you know, maybe it would have, I love the bottled city of Kandor. So maybe it would have something to do with that. Maybe the story would, it would have something to do with Superman's effort to restore the bottle city of Kandor, or maybe like maybe the fortress's computer has an AI, or maybe it's like the AI of the Jor-El hologram or something that has either taken it upon themselves or has been assigned by Superman to find a way to restore the bottle city to its full size. And so the story is about their ultimately failed efforts to restore the city to normal size. And you could bring in a bunch of stuff from the fortress as a part, as a part of the story, because the story could take place entirely within the Fortress of Solitude, and maybe it could span several years, of repeated failed attempts to try and restore the city to its full size. And ultimately, maybe that they would reach some kind of compromise solution where the city can't be brought back to its normal size, but there's some way that you can give the people of the city some kind of relief, or some kind of escape from the bottle, something like that's probably how I would go. Because yeah, you're right. I mean, it would need to be a story. It couldn't just be, a story about Superman just jacking off in the Fortress of Solitude. It would have to be a story, and Kandor being there is established. And if you go back through the Silver Age comics, there's a bunch of wacky stuff in the fortress that could be put into the service of that goal of trying to restore the city to normal size. So something like that is where I would go for it. Yeah, is where I would go for it. Yeah, yeah. That's my pitch. That's my half-assed off the top of my head pitch. Social Justice Alchemy agrees with Steve that Star Trek is only okay. Not my words, not what I said. Oh boy. Fuck, marry, kill. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Donald Trump. Jesus. Kill Donald Trump, because he's got it coming. Let's see. Bezos has more money than Elon Musk, right? Okay, so kill Trump, marry Bezos, fuck Elon. How about that? It doesn't really matter which one of them you're fucking, because it's not going to take very long anyway. So, kill Trump, because he's the most evil of the three of them, I think. Doesn't matter which one you fuck, because it's going to be a 10-second experience no matter what. And so the marriage comes down to what can you drag out of them? What can you pull out of them when you inevitably divorce them? And I think since Bezos has the larger fortune, you go for that. So, yeah. So I think, I would marry and subsequently divorce and fleece old Geoff Bezos. That's what I would do. Geoff Bezos. Sugareva syndrome. Steve, what do you think of the idea of parole juries? A lot of states have parole boards, but they do very little since they're staffed by governors who want to appear tough on crime and attract campaign cash from for-profit prisons. Florida and the federal government have done away with parole entirely. Why can't the same public who sends someone to prison decide whether or not they want the same person back on the streets instead? I think that's a good idea. Maybe something like the parole equivalent of like a grand jury, not necessarily the same as like a trial jury, but something like a grand jury that is a more of a long-standing thing, and that could meet and decide whether or not inmates that are up for parole get it, instead of like a governor appointed or an executive appointed parole board. That might be something. But yeah, I do think it's a good idea, to take it out of the hands of people who are more interested in politics than in following the law and doing the right thing. So yeah, I think that kind of thing, if it's done properly, if it's laid out properly, and it's used correctly, I think that could be a really good thing. Jim Baker, theists and atheists alike have a common problem to grapple with, namely free will. As a theist, I have to wrestle with predestination, the idea that God knows the end from the beginning, so the events of my life are already known. Does that mean I cannot choose otherwise? And if so, then how can I be held morally accountable for my actions? Similarly, atheists have to face the problem of determinism. In a closed system of cause and effect, we are the inevitable products of a long chain of events. If we could not do otherwise, again, whence moral accountability? My question is, what are your thoughts on free will? Also, why can't I ever comment on any of your Facebook posts? Are you giving me the hi hat? Um, my Facebook is set to only friends can comment on posts, so I guess we're not Facebook friends. So it's nothing personal. It's just I've found it much easier to manage my Facebook posts if only people who I'm friends with can comment. Um, but I think the way to the solution to this from both ends, from the theist side and the atheist side, is that, and this is not going to be terribly deep or philosophical, but whether we truly have free will or whether free will is just an illusion and we live in a deterministic universe where our choices are not actually choices, no matter which one of those is true, it feels like we have free will. And therefore, it only makes sense to me to organize our society upon the assumption that we do. I suppose if we don't have free will and everything is just predetermined anyway, it doesn't matter one way or the other because whatever happens is what's going to happen. But from the perspective of what if it's not deterministic? Uh, what if our feeling of free will is genuine and we actually do authentically have free will? I just think it makes more sense to organize our society in that way and to treat people and to treat ourselves and to live our lives um, on the assumption that our choices do matter and that we are and rightly should be uh, responsible for our choices and our actions. So that's basically where I come down on it. I don't know for sure if we have free will or not. It's a fascinating subject. It's great to argue about and talk about, but it's ultimately it's above my pay grade, and really nobody knows. Um, but it feels like free will is real. It feels like our choices matter. It feels like um, we have free will. So I think it only makes sense to organize our society in that way and leave the ethical debates and the questions of whether or not moral accountability should be a thing for the philosophers. And when it comes to conducting our lives, on a day by day basis and organizing and structuring our society and trying to decide, what laws to pass and what to do with criminals and et cetera, and how to bestow punishments and rewards, that we should operate on the assumption that we have free will. Lynn Kibblemom says, "Hi, Steve. I'm sorry to inform you that you have been infected with the Doolittle virus. Depending on the variant, you will either begin speaking in a Cockney accent or be able to understand the speech of animals and be understood by them as well. If it is the latter variant, you will only be able to communicate with one animal species other than Homo sapiens, and this will be determined by the first animal you encounter. Assuming you can control this encounter, which species would you like to be able to communicate with, and what would you talk about? Other than this virus, I hope you are doing well." Well, thank you. I'm doing fine. I didn't realize I had it until just now. So, oh boy, I mean, it's tempting to say dogs because I just love dogs so much, and it would be delightful to know what's on a dog's mind. But honestly, you kind of know what's on a dog's mind, like especially if it's a dog if it's your dog and you're close with them, you kind of know what's like. Dogs aren't nearly as inscrutable as cats. I feel like I'd have to say cats because I love cats too, but cats are much more difficult to read, right? Not impossible, and it's possible to know what your cat's thinking too, because I had a cat for many years, and I could tell what she was thinking. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes she would just start meowing at shit. You'd be like, "What is it?" But cats are a lot more inscrutable, and cats seem like they have a lot more going on in here that they're not telling you about. So I think if I had to choose, I would choose to be able to communicate with cats. I think that would be interesting. And at least you would, like they could insult you more articulately so that you can understand it. And that would be, I think, a very fulfilling experience for both of us. Russell, good evening, Steve. I trust you're well. Today's Ask Away, as promised, will focus on NYPD Blue. And as a courtesy to the room, this will contain spoilers. Spoilers for NYPD Blue, everybody. Where to begin? Okay, first off, I do love the Kelly era, not simply because of Caruso's performance, but also this season was a great character builder for Sipowicz. We get to see him be the drunk that he often refers to in later seasons. So I'm just going to start from the beginning. We see Sipowicz have an unknown beef with a mob skell named Alphonse Giardella, which leads to Alphonse shooting Sipowicz. We see Janice, who was ordered by Marino to keep an eye on Kelly, then later ordered to kill Kelly, which she instead kills Marino and the driver. Sipowicz recovers. Giardella is later arrested and confesses to a crime he didn't commit to be put into state witness protection. From there, it's about Sipowicz getting back on his feet and catching cases with his partner. After rewatching, I still felt Kelly had to go. And then there's a question mark, so I know that it's a question. I think it's a good show in the first season. The Kelly era, for people who don't know about NYPD Blue, the Kelly era is really just the first season and the first few episodes of the second season because David Caruso leaves 4 or 5 episodes, 6 episodes maybe into the first season, and then Jimmy Smits comes in and is the lead for the next few years. So the Kelly era is we're really mostly talking about the first season. I think it's a good show in the first season. I think it's a good show from the very beginning. And I like the Kelly era. I like a lot of the Kelly episodes. I think Kelly is a good character and that David Caruso is a terrific actor. And I think if he had stayed with the show, it would have been a good show, right? But I also think that him leaving worked out better for the show in the long run because two things happened when David Caruso left. The first thing is Jimmy Smits came in to replace him, and Jimmy Smits is a fantastic actor, and his character, Bobby Simone, is my favorite character in the whole run of the show. I love Bobby Simone. I'm a huge mark for him. I think he's a great character played by a great actor. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is Sipowicz kind of becomes a co-lead. Now, Sipowicz was very important to the show from the first season, right? And it's not like Dennis Franz was just in the ensemble. Like, he was always a very important character in the show. But I think it's fair to say that he steps up and starts getting a lot more real estate in episodes to himself after Caruso leaves. Caruso's character in the first season was very much the lead character of the show. I mean, it was the Kelly show. And the other detectives were important and they got their own subplots and there was, development of their characters. And it wasn't, but he was very much the center of the series. And Jimmy Smits was more or less the center of the series when he was on, but he wasn't nearly as far out front of everybody else as Kelly was, right? So, and I think that works better for the show because the cast is so strong, especially during the Jimmy Smits years. The cast is so strong because you have not only Dennis Franz, but you also have Nick Turturro and Kim Delaney and Gail O'Grady and Andrea Thompson and I can't remember his name now. The actor who did I say Nick Turturro? Nick Turturro's in it. He's good. But anyway, it's a great cast. It's a great cast. I'm trying to. I can't think of his name. The guy he plays Lieutenant Fancy. I can't think of his name. It's gone. It's out of my head. But anyway, but yes, and it allowed that ensemble to sort of step up and show itself off a little bit more than it was doing in the Kelly season. So I think it was good for the show overall that he left, and that there was a little bit more breathing room for the other characters. But I think that it could have still been a good show if Kelly had. It just would have been a different show. So I think I agree with you, is what I'm saying. Some random geek venting about capitalism in the state again. How can I make more money? I have to figure out how to make more money. I see no other way to help my friends like Joanna, Phoenix, Naz the Neko, and Tavi other than making more money to give to my friends. I gave Joanna over $50,000 over the last 4 years I've known her, and I also have given many other friends in need. I have thought about getting a second job. Right now, I just plan to stream as much as I can on Twitch, twitch.tv/somerandomgeek, to raise funds for all of the friends in need. I plan to make that my second job, only pennies making so far, because I see no other way in the meantime to help my friends. And the system is actively hurting them rather than helping, like with Joanna's story with CPS. And the Democrat leaders aren't going to help. They don't want to forgive student debt. They say we are all capitalists, and they gave up on voters' rights, hoping grassroots organizing will overcome voter suppression again. So, how do I make more money? You want to make more money? Sure, we all do. Um, have you considered international correspondence schools? I mean, I honestly I don't know. If I knew how to make more money and I could just tell you and it would work, I'd be doing it. You know, I mean, like I'm doing okay with the YouTube gig and my bills are paid. I'm doing fine. But like, if there was an easy way I could think of that I had enough of a handle on that I could just tell it to you over this live stream and it would work, I'd be doing that shit. You know, so I don't know. I wish I did. I would tell not only you, I would tell lots of other people too. You know, if it was just, oh, you know, you should stuff envelopes. Something tells me in the digital age, envelope stuffing is not really a viable career. But you know, uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I wish you the best on your Twitch channel. I know you've been doing it for a while. But yeah, if anybody wants to help Geek out there in his second job and help him raise some money that he can then pass on to his friends in need, twitch.tv/somerandomgeek. There you go. Go check it out and help him out and support him however you can over there. But yeah, if I knew, I would tell you. If I knew, I would tell you. I would totally be Sally Struthers in this situation. Um, Isaiah Taylor. So, Steve, as you know, the Klingons were meant to be contemporary social commentary on the Soviet Union. Yet, unlike the actual Soviet Union, the Klingon and Romulan empires are strangely homogenous. On Earth, empires were made up of many different ethnicities. The Soviet Union had Latvians, Lithuanians, Poles, Slavs, Ukrainians, etc., serving in the Soviet armed forces. Would you like a story of non-Klingons serving on a Klingon bird of prey in service to the Klingons? For me, it's a bird of prey with hard-ass 90s Seattle riot girl female warriors serving the Empire, making the Cardassians and Romulans shudder with their killer grunge lyrics, LOL. But seriously, would you be interested in a story of non-Klingons serving in the Klingon Defense Force? Also, what do you think of a Star Trek TNG TOS movie anime series? I think Star Wars is coming out with something like that, Star Wars Visions. Again, it comes down to the story. I mean, I hate to keep repeating myself, but I think the idea of non-Klingons serving in the Klingon Defense Force is potentially intriguing. Yeah, I think that could be a really interesting idea. But I would need to hear the story. You know, I would need to know who the characters are. I need to know what they want. I need to know what their mission is, or what you know what the what's the hook, right? But yeah, I think it's got potential as a premise, as a general idea. Non Klingons fighting with the Klingons and kicking ass, and having their own ship, and serving the Klingon Empire, but not being Klingons themselves. Like I think that potentially could be a cool idea for sure. Um, and would I be interested in a Star Trek anime series? Again, it would depend. I'm not when I hear anime series, that doesn't automatically make me want to see it. Anime is something that I can take or leave. I have seen anime shows that I've absolutely loved, and I've seen anime stuff that I've just kind of shrugged at and gone, oh, okay, whatever, you know. So it would again, it would depend on the show. It would depend on the story. It would depend on if it's any good, you know. But yeah, potentially, sure. I would probably at least check it out. Like if it was Star Trek, I would at least check it out. I would watch it an episode just to see if it's my cup of tea. Yeah, I would definitely give it a chance. Dana Cole. So I'm gonna keep it easy this time. You don't have to put together a crew, but which one is your favorite and why? I love that she doesn't even have to say Star Trek. She knows I'm gonna know what she means. My favorite crew is probably TNG, the Enterprise D crew is probably my favorite. Um, I think Deep Space Nine is a better show. I think Deep Space Nine has a better cast of characters. Like if you take in all of the regulars and recurring characters on Deep Space Nine throughout the entire 7-year run. I think Deep Space Nine has the best cast of characters. But if we're talking just about the crew of the ship or the station, as the case may be, I think I would have to go with TNG. And TNG doesn't really have much in the way of character development, which again, Deep Space Nine is the champion of. But the characters on TNG, the Starfleet characters, the crew of the Enterprise D, by the time we get to season 2 or season 3, everybody is very, very well drawn. Like, you know who Captain Picard is. He doesn't change much. He's not a very dynamic character, but you know who Captain Picard is. You know who Commander Riker is. You know who Dr. Crusher is. You know who Data is. You know who Counselor Troy is. You know who George. You know who they all are, right? You know who Worf is. You know who everybody is. And some of that is that, the writers have gotten comfortable with them. And some of that is that the actors have settled in by season 2 and 3. And they know, like Michael Dorn knows who Worf is now as an actor. He knows how to play him. He's like, I've got this guy. Brent Spiner finally kind of found his groove with Data after kind of doing some different things in season 1 and season 2. And he's like, he finally got it. He's like, I know who he is. Same thing with Picard and Patrick Stewart. Like, you can tell, you can feel the actors finding their way with the characters in the first couple of seasons. And when they finally dial it in, it's a really likable crew. The characters are all very likable. They're different from each other. They're easy to sort of grasp and get a handle on, and they're heroic. They all have their different little interests, and they're all strong enough to carry an episode on their own, which I think is really important. So yeah, I think my favorite, and like I said, in terms of if we're just calling it my favorite, I like them all so much. They're all just so likable. They're likable characters. Even Troy, who is not well served by the writers most of the time, she's not an unlikable character, And of course, my main man Riker is there. So I think if I had to pick a favorite Star Trek crew, it would be the TNG crew. Relic 5000. Hey, Steve, got no question this week, but I'm paying you for the privilege to post here, so I will. Keep up the good work. You're a legend. Looking forward to your next video. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being a supporter. That means a lot. John Burns. Hey, Steve. They say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. There are places in the world where war will always be a part of life. As populations bump into each other, they have different ways of settling issues, but there are also places in the world which can be free of such concerns. One reason is because of nuclear weapons. There are countries in Europe who are able to deal with issues without fear of invasion, and nuclear weapons are a big reason for that. On the other hand, there's also less of a need to look to one's government for security. With the focus on individual rights and the knowledge that governments can't truly protect their citizens from nuclear weapons, living in an empire is less important to people today. If you could choose to live anywhere in the world, or if you could take a vacation, price was no option, where would you go and what would you do? So, okay, the premise here is that nuclear weapons have made the world safe. So I can take a vacation to lots of different places where would I want to go. I mean, if I could take it, I would probably want to go to Japan. I've never been to Japan. Once COVID is over with and traveling is safe, right? I would love to go to Japan and see a New Japan wrestling show at Tokyo Dome. I'd love to go to Wrestle Kingdom in January sometime and see a Tokyo Dome show. That'd be fantastic. Now, I would love. And there's a remote little village in Japan called Shingo, which is supposedly the final resting place of Jesus Christ. There's this very peculiar offshoot cult of Christianity that believes that Jesus was not actually crucified, that he was, he survived the crucifixion through some way that is not recorded in the traditional Bible. And he eventually found his way to this little tiny village in Japan called Shingo, and he is buried there. I would like to go there just to say I've been, but yeah, Japan is one place. Australia seems nice. New Zealand seems nice. So yeah, I'd like to go there. I mean, there's places in the United States I've never been that I'd like to go. I'd like to go to Cooperstown and see the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'd like to go south. I'd like to go west. There's places that there's lots of places I'd like to visit. But just for the sake of the place, if we're making the decision just based on the place, probably Japan. Go see a Tokyo Dome New Japan show. That'd be cool. Um, and finally, last question from Siamak, who says, back to my perhaps too late ways. Would love, scared, to hear your take on Dem chances after the events of the last 10 days in Afghanistan. As an Iranian American, Afghan and Iranians share a language. It's been heartbreaking to hear the pleas for help from people that sound like my family. But regardless, this seems to me that it's the cudgel that will be used by the Trumplicans to take back, oh God, probably both houses. Your thoughts. So, and you can, I'm sure you can relate to this, and I'm sure all the people in the chat or all the people watching this who are progressives, and especially who are progressives and are affiliated in some way with the Democratic Party, either you're registered Democrat or you vote Democrat, support Democrats, regularly. You're all probably familiar with this feeling of constant nervousness, bordering on and sometimes tipping over into dread that whatever power the Democrats have, they're about to lose it. I feel like you cannot be a Democrat or a supporter of the Democratic Party in the United States and not have the feeling that no matter how good they're doing, no matter how well things seem to be, that they're always about 2 or 3 moves from completely blowing it. And so, of course, I'm worried that the Afghanistan situation will hurt the Democrats in the midterms and in the general in 2024, and that they will lose the House and they will lose the Senate and they will lose the White House. I worry about that stuff all the time anyway. And of course, the Afghanistan situation makes me worry about it even more. I'm tremendously concerned about it because it's a shit show. And it's not just a shit show politically speaking, humanitarian, in humanitarian terms. It's a tragedy and a crisis and a fiasco and an outrage. I mean, the fact that so many of these people have been left behind is outrageous. And yes, they apparently according to the president and according to other spokespeople for the Pentagon and the diplomatic corps, like we are getting people out. Thousands of people are being flown out every day. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I don't know why this couldn't have been done before the military completed most of its evacuation. Why couldn't the military have stayed until all of the Americans were out and all of the Afghanis who wanted to leave were out? And by the way, that's another thing. Not just the Afghanis who worked with us. We should get all of them out too. All of the people who worked with the United States, who were translators, who were support, who fear for their lives from the Taliban because they worked with the United States. Yeah, it goes without saying, they should all be out of there, right? But also, anybody else who wants to fucking leave, we should get them out. Just regular, everyday Afghan citizens who say, hey, if the Taliban's taken over, I don't want to fucking be here. We should get them out too. And we should bring them here and they can live here. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things that are completely fucked up about this situation. And Biden is the president, and it falls on his shoulders, fairly or unfairly. And I think a lot of the blame rightly does belong to him. I don't think all of it belongs to him. And I think there is definitely room to acknowledge that Trump fucked this up on purpose, knowing that Biden would have to deal with it. But Biden and his administration, I think, clearly could have done a better job with this. So there's plenty of blame to go around, including a lot of it falling on the shoulders of Joe Biden. And it's just a shit show. It's just a shit show. And there's I don't see any excuse for it. And I know Biden recently said in one of his interviews in the last couple of days, he said, I don't see how we could have done this without it being so chaotic. And I mean, I'm sure that it was always going to be kind of a shit show because we've been there for 20 years and now suddenly we're pulling out. I don't doubt that there's no way it could have gone completely smoothly, but my God, it could have been better than this, right? I have to believe there was some plausible scenario where it would have run better than this and where our priorities would be different. So we're again, like I said, we're not just getting out our troops and other Americans and Afghans who worked with us. but also anybody else who wants to leave. Anybody who wants to get out of there, that we have the power to get out of there, we should be getting the fuck out of there. And so yeah, I share your concerns and your sympathies with those people over there, and I share your concerns with what this is going to mean politically. Um, yeah, I don't know I don't know any other way to say it other than it's a shit show. All right, so that's it for the patron questions and the member questions. And now I will turn my full attention to my wonderful people who are hanging out in the live chat, and I will answer everybody's questions in the live chat. The first question I saw is from Dana, who says, "Would you be willing to house any refugees?" No, I'm not doing. No, I'm not housing refugees. Nobody's living with me. No, nobody's living with me. I'm sorry. Nothing against refugees. I think they should. I think refugees should be given their own places to live. I don't think they should be, put in other people's houses. We should be having houses for the refugees to live in on their own. And nobody's living with me. I'm living by myself. Okay. And if that makes me a hypocrite, that makes me a hypocrite. I can live with it. But what I can't live with is somebody else. So yeah. Knit and Crochet Tiger says, Dane, I wouldn't say nobody's living with me ever. There are a couple of exceptions to the nobody's living with me rule, but for the most part, I kind of like living on my own. I've gotten quite used to it. Anyway, I was about to answer Knit and Crochet Tiger's question. What are your thoughts about Marjorie Taylor Greene calling Joe Biden a piece of shit? I think she's the piece of shit that flies, maggots, and dung beetles commit suicide to avoid. I don't know. My thoughts are exactly what you just said. It's very much a pot calling the kettle black situation. I mean, even if you think that Joe Biden is a piece of shit, and I don't happen to think that, but even if you think that Joe Biden is a piece of shit, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a way bigger piece of shit, right? I mean, yes, Dana, I'm a spinster, exactly. Hey, Steve, I do call it living, as a matter of fact. Yes, Stuffy lives with me, absolutely. Siamak, can you live with me? You could stay with me. You could spend the night maybe if you wanted to come visit and crash. I have a pull-out couch. Same thing for you, Sarah. Like you could make a brief visit. A brief visit. But don't get too comfortable, god damn it. Geraldo Trekkie says, a German quiz show had a Star Trek question today. What's the name of the android under Captain Picard? The candidate answered Spock. Wow. That should be... you should be able to put someone in prison for that. Super chat from John Burns. Thank you, my friend. Super chats are welcome, by the way, if anybody is feeling generous. John, thank you very much. The John super chat says, how many American armed forces bases around the world occurred under a Democratic president? I'm sure many in Japan and Europe happened under FDR. One is in Newfoundland. Is Joe concerned about NL? I don't think so. I'm sure. I don't know what the exact numbers are. I'm sure a lot of military bases were opened under the authority of Democrat presidents. It's not so much. I honestly, I don't have a problem with the United States having military bases in other countries as long as the other countries are okay with it, and it's there for some kind of a mutual benefit. Like I don't have any problem with that at all. But I mean, Afghanistan is a country we invaded, and that we invaded, and we were there for 20 years. We didn't really make things any better for them. And then we left. So it's a little different situation than like having a military base in like Germany or someplace where, where we are. I mean, granted, we didn't open our bases in Germany weren't opened voluntarily at first either, but eventually the government of Germany and the government of the United States became friends and allies, and it's not a matter of us being an occupying force. I don't think we should be an occupying force in places, unless we absolutely need to be. But yeah, that's a good point, though. Um, let's see here. Radical Bacon asks, should other countries have bases in the USA? Honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If there are allies, if Canada or Great Britain or or Germany or so, if a country that's our ally wanted to station troops, or like I'm I'm sure a lot of Americans would be like, oh no, that would be terrible. Like I wouldn't have a problem with that. Like they're our friends, right? They trust us. We trust them. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Um, Sarah, don't go making plans. Um, Another super chat, a couple of more super chats from John Burns. First one says, John McCain will be in the Middle East 1,000 years. I mean, it feels like we have been already. Um, and then also says, so you'd support dismantling Guantanamo? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely support closing the prison camp. Now, there's more to Guantanamo than just the prison camp. But yeah, I would support shutting down the whole thing if that were feasible. Absolutely. I think we should definitely have shut down the prison camp, but shutting down you know, the base in general. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the Cuban government and the people of Cuba, for the most part, don't really want us there. I feel like we're sort of an unwanted presence. So, you know, yeah, I would be completely okay with that. Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, Kemp Chalmers, don't dismantle Guantanamo. We need another Harold and Kumar. Well, they'll just have to go somewhere else. um, oh, Dana, I feel like Dana's heading to bed soon. That's okay, Dana. That's okay. Go to bed. That's fine. I'll have to stay up and finish this live stream. And then actually, no, I'm staying up at least until 11. And the wrestling fans, if any of the wrestling fans are watching, you know why I'm staying up tonight. I'm not. There's no chance I'm going to bed early tonight. But Dana not being a wrestling fan, I understand, and also I know you having had a long day. I understand wanting to go to bed, but yeah. 255 AD says, was that one of your main problems with the idea of living on a Narish, the idea of living in a fucking dorm? That wasn't one of my main problems, but yeah, that is, I mean, I would not like that. I would not enjoy that. No, I don't want to live. If I have the option to live by myself, especially if in the situation I'm in now where I'm single, I mean, obviously when I was married, it's different, but now that I'm single, no, I don't want to, why would why would any, and this is just me. I know I'm not there are other people with their own philosophies and their own preferences. I understand that, but just for me personally, if I don't need to have a roommate for financial necessity, why would anybody want to live with somebody else? Like, why would anybody want a roommate? I've had a roommate, like a platonic roommate, right? I way prefer living on my own. It's not even close. I don't understand why anybody who doesn't have to would want to live with another person, you know. And again, unless it's like a partner, like a spouse or a romantic partner type situation. Like it's not. I would much rather live on my own. So yeah. Um, Another super chat from John Burns who says, times change. Woodrow Wilson watched Birth of a Nation in the White House. Republicans were isolationists during FDR's terms. The Democrats could always end up supporting slavers in the future. I suppose they could. I hope they don't. But I suppose that is possible, yes. Yeah, Donald's got it. Donald Paluga. Absolutely. I hope we hear it. I hope we hear it tonight. I hope I would I don't know. Like I know as much as any other fan does. I don't know, but I would like to think that Tony has licensed Cult of Personality, and that we will be hearing the opening strings, the opening notes of that song very shortly after 10 o'clock tonight. That's my hope, but I don't know. I don't know. Um, um, Kemp Chalmers says roommates are good because they share pot with you when you run out. I don't smoke pot, so checkmate. Um, Dana says, "What about having your own room in a communal building?" I'd rather just have my own place. If it's like an apartment building, then I guess that's fine. Because I've lived in apartment buildings. Right now I live in a house, but if I had my own apartment in an apartment building where I could keep to myself, you know, and only be around other people when I chose to be, then I guess that would be okay. You know, but if it was like just a room and it was like if it was like a dorm room where I had my own bedroom, but there was like a shared kitchen and a shared living room, and oh fuck that. That's like having a roommate. No, fuck that. That's for the birds. Alberto sees where I'm going too. Alberto Valencia, straight edge. Yes, exactly. Um, Radical Bacon says, "What if Donald Trump dies before 2024?" Well, then I'm super happy. um, 255 AD, yes. Moore's For the Man Who Has Everything is set in the Fortress of Solitude. It mostly takes place in Superman's head, but still, yeah. And that's one of the best Superman stories ever published in a comic book. I love For the Man Who Has Everything. And you're right, that is a fortress. It doesn't. Yeah, you're right. It's in Superman's head, so there's stuff that isn't in the fortress exactly, but it takes place in the fortress. And yeah, it's a hell of a story. Dana, yeah, I know, but I don't want to live with other people. Okay. um, David Colby asks, "Why is it so much fun to say checkmate atheists in a silly way?" Because most of the people who say that sincerely are very silly people. That's my spin on it. Deralta Trekkie says, "So Roddenberry and Frakes celebrated their birthdays yesterday. What do you think? How would we live as a society? How would we as a society have developed without Star Trek?" Honestly, I don't think the development of society would have been all that different. I think that Star Trek inspired a lot of people who were scientists and engineers to invent technology that is sort of modeled after some Star Trek stuff. And I do think that Star Trek overall has had a positive impact on the development of society to the extent that it has had an impact. But I don't think society would be all that different today if Star Trek had not happened. I think we would eventually somebody would have invented the cellular phone and somebody would have invented smartphones. And, I think the major break we would have video calls and stuff like that. I don't think that it would necessarily be all that different. Um, Dana asks, "What's the effective difference between a bedroom and an apartment then? Because in either case, you can avoid the people living nearby as you do." Well, because a bedroom is one room. It's not as much space. I want to have some space. Like I use the space I have. I have my bedroom. I have the room where I keep all my stuff. I have the kitchen. I have the living room, and I use all of it for work and for play. Okay, so I like having. I don't want to just have my whole life confined to one fucking room. Um, CMX says, "How are you liking Riker in Lower Decks? I'm loving him in Door the Camp." Yeah, me too. I'm liking Riker in Lower Decks a lot. He's a lot of fun. I still the drawback to it, as I said at the end of the first season of Lower Decks, is that Riker in Lower Decks is so much fun that I wish that was the show. Like I wish that there was just a show about a wacky animated comedy about Riker in Command of the Titan. I would rather watch that show than watch Lower Decks. And I like Lower Decks. Don't get me wrong. Like I like Lower Decks, but I would much rather watch the Riker show. So that's the only sort of, that's the downside to it, is that they make They make Riker on the Titan look like so much fun that it's like, oh, can't we just stay here? Oh, I want to stay here and watch the show instead. Um, no, Kemp, actually, I don't walk around in the nude. That's not, I mean, I hope this isn't too much information for people, but no, I don't walk around in the nude. Sometimes when I'm working out, I'll walk around in like just a pair of workout shorts without a shirt on, but that's as close as I get to walking around in the nude. If I'm walking around, if I'm out of bed, I'm usually dressed. Even if I don't plan to leave the house, like I'm showered and dressed and ready to go. I'm just hateful is the reason I don't want people. I'm just hateful and misanthropic. That's why I don't want people around. It has nothing to do with like, oh, I want to walk around naked. I just don't like having people around. Um, hey, Kirak 2011 says, "Hey Steve, I'm finally here. How are you, buddy? I'm great. I'm great." Yeah, Alberto Valencia. I have a yes. It's because of my embarrassing full chest tattoo. I don't want anybody else to see it. You got me. You got me. Oh, it's funny. Um, Geralta Trekkie says, I watched season 8 of The Practice, the introductory episode of Alan Shore, after I knew him from Boston Legal. Did you watch The Practice, and did you like Alan before Boston Legal? I've never watched either show, so sorry. I can't have an opinion because I have not watched either show. Yeah, I do have, obviously I do have stuffed animals, Geek, but that's not the main reason why I don't live with others. Dorota Trekkie says, I turned 38 on August 18th, and I don't feel as if I'd be 38. Do you feel age appropriate, whatever that means? Well, yeah, I mean, that's sort of that's the question, right? Like, what does it mean? I'm 41. What does that feel like? What's that supposed to feel like? I know I can say for myself, physically, I feel as good as I've ever felt in my life. I'm working out regularly for the first time for almost the last year, ever since I moved out and I moved into my own place. Um, I've made an effort to work out regularly. So, I mean, physically, I think I'm in really good condition. My allergies, because I've been taking Flonase every day for a couple years now, my allergies are well under control. I don't really have like really, really bad allergy days where I feel like shit anymore. And just, I mean, I feel pretty good. I don't know how long it'll last. I'm told by people who are a little older than me that eventually shit's going to start to break down. And I'm not going to feel this good forever. And I know that's inevitable. I know it's going to happen at some point. So, but yeah, I feel pretty good for 41. You know, I think I look okay. I think I'm reasonably well preserved. I think I'm holding together pretty good. So yeah, I mean, however I'm supposed to feel, I don't know. I don't feel old. So I guess that's a good thing. um, Alberto Valencia, will I live longer than Elvis? I hope so. It wasn't Elvis only. Elvis was only like in his 40s when he died, right? So yeah, I hope I live longer than Elvis. Fuck. um. Manitalis asks, do you like Xena? It's been a long time since I've watched it, but I remember liking it when it was on. Yeah. I liked both Xena and Hercules. It's one of the reasons why Kevin Sorbo turning out to be such an asshole is such a bummer, because I liked Hercules and I liked him in Hercules. I thought he was good in Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. It was a fun show, you know, nothing too deep, nothing too serious, but it was fun. And I thought he was good in it. And it turns out he's a huge piece of shit. That sucks, but yeah, I liked Xena too. Lucy Lawless, so far as I can tell, the opposite, is completely not a piece of shit. Seems like a really cool person. And yeah, I remember liking Xena. I thought it was a pretty good show. 255AD says, if you parole juries, how would you deal with people not being able to get parole just because the general population has a bias against some kinds of criminals? Well, I mean, we have to deal with that problem already. Like, I'm not sure how you deal with that other than education and outreach and trying to raise awareness and trying to change people's hearts and minds. You know, I don't know how else you can deal with that, because if there is a prejudice in the population against a particular kind of criminal, that is unfair, that is keeping people in prison longer than they need to be there, then I don't know how else you deal with that other than trying to change people's minds. um Radical Bacon says, why are cats? Cats are for snuggles and scritches and for eating your food and sapping your body heat. That's why cats are. That's cats. That's the whole deal with cats. Oh, good night, Dana. Good night, Dana. Um, Let me see. Steve S has a good point here. Says, watched your Robin Hood vid. You forgot to mention the amount of drool the sheriff put out. Yeah, and that death scene. Oh my God, he was drooling like crazy. And then there was also, you remember when they catch Will Scarlet in the crowd, and they're going to string him up with the rest of the people that are going to be hanged, but there's no room on the gallows, so they bend him over a barrel and they're going to chop his head off. And the executioner ties him to the barrel, and he drools on his face. He's like, "Always room for one more." Like a big lump of drool comes out of his mouth. Yeah, a lot of drool in Robin Hood Prince. I guess the Middle Ages were a very drooly period. I don't know. Um, 25 AD says, what do you make of the claim a dictatorial regime wouldn't be able to control the U.S. indefinitely? That was part of my question I thought you'd take issue with. No, I actually agree with that. I think authoritarian regimes um, are inherently unstable because they don't have the support of the people. You know, um, I think one of the reasons why the government of the United States has lasted as long as it has is that, for better or for worse, maybe even in times when it shouldn't have, it has had more or less the support of the people. The reason why there hasn't been a revolution or there hasn't been a toppling of the government is because people haven't wanted it. Whereas if there was a dictator, if there was some kind of harshly authoritarian ruler, I think it would be much more likely that a large portion of the population would want to topple that ruler. So I kind of agree with that. Another super chat from John Burns, who says, Lucy Lawless replying to Kevin Sorbo and caused many to post on Twitter the Simpsons episode clip where Lucy says, I'm not Xena, I'm Lucy Lawless. Yes, I remember that. I remember that. I remember both her responding to Kevin Sorbo on Twitter, and also I remember that clip from The Simpsons, which was the end of a segment in one of the Halloween specials. Geraldo Trekkie says, I gotta say, I liked the Disney Robin Hood. Would you do a video about that one? I might. I like the Disney Robin Hood. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it did some things with the story that other versions haven't done that I thought were interesting. I liked it. I like the Errol Flynn version. I like the Douglas Fairbanks version. Those are sort of we've covered all the major ones now. Um, so yeah, there are lots. The Robin Hood story inherently, I think, is an interesting story, and it's a great sort of swashbuckling adventure. Prince of Thieves is my favorite, but there's lots of interesting Robin Hood movies out there. I think I mentioned on Wednesday at the end of or at the beginning, I guess, of my live stream with Dana before we watched Deep Space Nine. That I'm watching Robin of Sherwood, which is a TV series from the '80s. That is a Robin Hood show, and I just started the second. I watched the first episode of the second season today, in fact, and I'm enjoying that. That's a good show. So there's lots of interesting and quality Robin Hood adaptations. Alberto Valencia says, "Does Steve Shives have a favorite sitcom?" Yes, I have. I enjoy a lot of sitcoms. I think my favorite ever um, is probably All in the Family. But I also really love I Love Lucy. Um, my I love the original British version of The Office, which again, kind of like the Kevin Sorbo situation, it's kind of a bummer that Ricky Gervais turned out to be such a fucking asshole because I think The Office is genius. I think The Office is the British Office is one of the best shows ever, I think. It's just a shame that the co-creator and star turned out to be such a piece of shit. But there's a lot of that going around. What are you going to do? Um, yeah, so I like that. I like the American Office as well to a lesser extent, but I still really enjoy it, especially when it's sort of at its peak from like season 2 to about season 5 before it starts to go downhill creatively. I think it was a terrific show. Um, my sentimental favorite is Perfect Strangers. It's not necessarily a good show, but it's a fun show. And Mark Lynn Baker and Bronson Pinchot have fantastic comic timing. They're a great comedy team. Even when the writing on that show was absolute dog shit, which was most of the time, they were able to elevate it and make it into something at least watchable and sometimes downright damn funny because they were just so good together and individually as performers. So my sentimental favorite is Perfect Strangers. But yeah, I like lots of sitcoms. Um, yeah, Steve Schmaling says I also like the look on the sheriff's face when he got stabbed was priceless. Like what the hell was that? Yeah, when he pulls the knife out and shows it to Marion, and he's like, "What the hell? I gave this to you. Come on." Yeah, it was great. It was great. Um, Homebody says, "Have you heard that Loki, I mean Elon Musk, is going to make android bots like Star Trek but dystopian?" I saw that clip going around on Twitter today of the robot. Yeah, it's like we haven't seen any of these movies. And I saw the other one. I think it was one of the. It was a clip going around that I actually retweeted. It was. I think it was one of those Boston Dynamics robots where it was like it was trying to run an obstacle course and not having a lot of success. But and it's like, I mean, have we put the Asimov fail safes in there already? I really hope so. It's never too early. Just go ahead and put the Asimov stuff in it so that they know that they're not supposed to harm a human being or cause a human being to come to harm through an action. Like we need to put that stuff in there right now. So it's established, it's embedded in the programming. So when they become self-aware, they don't start killing everybody 5 minutes later. Because like it's like we've never seen the movie. It's like we've made this movie so many times, and we have not learned the lessons that we have been trying to teach ourselves. So really, so basically, when the robot apocalypse happens, it's going to be it's going to be completely our fault, and we will totally have it coming because we're dipshit doofuses who didn't heed our own warnings to ourselves. Um, Super chat from John Burns who says, check out Marion and Her Merry Men. Includes Tony Robinson and Danny John Jules. Marion's the true leader. Yeah, I think you mentioned that to me, and a couple other people mentioned it. That like, and it sounds, I've never watched it, but the premise sounds funny that Marion is like the leader of the Merry Men, and Robin is just sort of her dipshit like figurehead that everybody thinks is in charge, but actually Marion is about. It sounds like a funny premise. I might, if I remember, I'll check it out. Radical Bacon says it's possible that without Star Trek, we wouldn't have had Obama as president. Maybe. I don't know. It's possible. I mean, I liked Obama as president, so I guess that would be that would be a negative for me. Oh, it's on YouTube. Thank you, John, and thank you again for the super chat. I'll check it out. 255 AD says, with regard to the Afghanistan thing, am I a bad progressive for saying I just don't know what Biden should have done? No, not at all. I don't know what he should have done either. I mean, the thing about Afghanistan is you can't change the past. You can't just undo having all those troops there. And given the situation as it was, you're faced with two undesirable choices. You can either leave troops there indefinitely, which nobody wants to do, or pull them out and take the chance that you're going to leave the country in some form of chaos and disarray, which is what has happened. I mean, there was no good solution from our perspective. So, I mean, no, I don't think that makes you a bad progressive at all. I think that makes you someone who is able to accept reality. You know, it was a shitty situation that we got ourselves into. That is our fault. That we shouldn't have been in. But we were there. And you know, it got to a point where there was no good solution, you know. Yeah, John, exactly. Without if not for Jerry Ryan and her shit bag of a husband opening up the Senate race so that Barack could get in there and get elected to the Senate. That's a great point. And also Radical Bacon, who brought it up in the first place. That's a great point. Alberto Valencia, is preventing 9/11 the new killing baby Hitler? Maybe. Not. I mean, obviously, 3,000 people died. If you could prevent 9/11, that sounds like a great deal. But I mean, even if you couldn't prevent 9/11, but you could just change American foreign policy in the aftermath of it, I feel like that would be a major good that you could accomplish. You know, because look at how many. I mean, yes, the people who died in the actual 9/11 attacks. It's 3,000 people. That's a horrific tragedy. But look how many orders of magnitude more people have died in the wars and various operations that followed it. Look how many, not just American and allied soldiers and like Iraqi soldiers that died in the Iraq war, but how many civilians. You know, look how many Afghanis died, both in combat and civilians in Afghanistan post 9/11. Like, if you could just adjust American foreign policy in the aftermath of 9/11, like 9/11 still happens, but we just handle things in the aftermath a lot smarter and with a lot more finesse, with a lot more restraint. Think how different things could be, you know. Dorothy Trekkie says, my family and I watched 2 Francis Durbridge crime movies, the ultimate blockbusters back in the day. What's your favorite crime flick? Ooh, I really like The French Connection. And there's a movie that came out in, I think, either the late 90s or the early 2000s. I can't remember which. Called Narc, with Ray Liotta and Jason Patrick, that reminded me very much of like an updated version of The French Connection. That is really good too. But I mean, yeah, I think if I had to pick my favorite crime movie, probably The French Connection. I love The French Connection. And Jason hated it. When we reviewed that movie on Late Seating, that was one of the ones where we disagreed on. He did not like The French Connection. I think The French Connection is great. So, you know, we will agree to disagree. Alberto Valencia asks, am I doing okay, like emotionally? Yeah, no, I'm doing very well. Thank you. I'm doing very well. Emotionally and otherwise. So yeah. John Burns with another super chat. Thank you very much. Says the Senate is where smart people go to die. Some Random Geek says or asks, are top-down hierarchies good? I don't think they are inherently good or bad. I think it depends on the hierarchy. I mean, I'm not. You and I disagree about that. You take the position, at least as far as I can tell, as far as I understand your position, you take the position that the top-down hierarchies are bad. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think often in practice it is the case, but I don't think it's necessarily the case. Radical Bacon, would I be roommates with Jason? Jason is one I mean, because Jason's like my best friend. As long as we both had our own rooms and we had our own space, that might not be so bad. My preference would still be would be to live alone, but I mean, Jason comes a lot closer than most people do. And Yannick Muller asks, "Hey Steve, how's Adi doing?" As far as I know, Adi is good. I haven't seen Adi for a little while. Adi lives with Ashley now. Since Ashley and I split up, Adi lives with Mama. Um, the last I saw her was a few months ago, and she was great. And as far as I know from updates from Ashley, she's still in good health, and she's still her old ornery self, and she's doing really well. So yeah, Adi is doing really well, and thank you for asking about her. She's great. Um, oh shit. Um, Kirak 2011 says, I missed your response to my question, although it wasn't much of a question since there is so much to cover after about the first season anyway. The NYPD Blue question, yes, indeed. Mr. System 96 says, Goodfellas and The Irishman are up there as very good. Now, I'll give you Goodfellas. Goodfellas is great. I was not a huge fan of The Irishman. I think The Irishman was way, way too long. I was just not into that at all. It had its moments, or parts of The Irishman I thought were terrific. But overall, I was just like, boy, you need to make some choices. We don't need all of this. But I mean, Goodfellas is fantastic. Oh my God, Goodfellas is a masterpiece. And The Godfather Part 2. And Kirak 2011. There will be more on that subject in 2 weeks. Well, awesome. I'll talk about NYPD Blue with you as much as you want. Alberto, I knew that Franklin Pierce wasn't married, but I didn't know that he lived with a man who went by Aunt Fancy. I did not know that, but I knew that he wasn't married. Yeah. Radical Bacon says, was there anything that you did argue over? Like, was there a nice cast iron pan you both wanted? When me and Ashley split up? Nah, not really. There wasn't really any. We didn't really have any kind of conflict like that. No. We split up the possessions pretty amicably. And if there was something that either one of us really wanted, then the other just let them have it. No, that we I'm we're it was I feel very, very fortunate that it was for the most part a very amicable separation, and there wasn't anything like that where we were like fighting over who gets what. um Mr. System 96 says, you didn't notice the 3 hours and 30 minutes go by, though. It almost felt like 2 hours and 30 minutes. Well, maybe you didn't, but I sure as hell did. I sure as hell noticed. But I'm glad you didn't, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. um Bossa Nova, I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if everybody who seeks the highest levels of power are psychopaths or fell into it. Like, I mean, I think that's the case in a lot of. I mean, I'm not going to argue that that doesn't happen, but I don't think it's necessarily the case that if you seek um, a position of authority or high office that you are automatically a psychopath. I think that's a little bit too much of a blanket statement. Um, Alberto Valencia, am I interested in being a stepdad? No, I am not. Not even a little. Um, Dorota Trekkie says, I watched Blade Runner, the final cut last week, the first time, and I got to say, I'm underwhelmed. Why do people like Blade Runner? Well, I mean, I like Blade Runner, so I'll try to tell you what I liked about it. I really love the aesthetic of it. I like that sort of futuristic noir look that it has. I like the fact that it's, um, it has this sort of, futuristic sci-fi kind of dystopian setting, but that it's a detective story. I like the ambiguity about, which one of the characters are replicants and, that kind of thing. I think the acting is terrific. I think it's a really good performance from Harrison Ford. Um, I think Rutger Hauer is tremendous. I mean, that his last scene where he has his last monologue, about I've seen sea beams glistening off the shoulder of Orion, like that. His big death scene, there's a reason why that scene is so celebrated. It's a really good scene, I think. So I mean, yeah, I I like Blade Runner. I like the now I will say it would not make my greatest of all time list. Like I think the people who really like it from my perspective tend to overrate it, but I still think it's a terrific movie for sure. Um Dorota Trigger says, concerning Klingons, did you read the Star Trek Prometheus books that dealt with a cool Klingon Starfleet double act? I did not. I have not read the Prometheus books. Um, Some random geek says, but when you do create positions of power, you get those folks that just want power over others to be attracted to those positions. Yes, but that doesn't mean that's why you have to be vigilant. That's why the will of the people and the public is so important to to do the best that you can to ensure that unscrupulous people do not find themselves into those positions. Oh, see you later, Steve. Steve Schmeling is going to stop ignoring work. Well, thanks for stopping by. Um, Tasby 12 Blade Runner late seating review. Do it. I'm surprised we haven't done it actually. Have we done it? I don't think we have. We've done so many. We've done so many movies. Sometimes there are movies that I feel I'm trying to think like, have we done it? I'm pretty sure we haven't done Blade Runner, but yes, we should. Um, Alberto Valencia, does Steve read scripture to help with migraines? No, I don't read scripture really at all anymore. I mean, I'm an atheist, so I don't read it for religious purposes. And the only reason I would have read it before would be, either for like some kind of cultural study or because I was making an argument about some facet of the faith, and I don't really do that much anymore either. So and also happily, I don't really get migraines. It's not a problem that I have. So I don't need to do anything for migraines because I don't really get them. Uh, knock on wood. Um, and Bossa Nova, I disagree. I don't think that the primary system is really corrupt. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think that there are there are definitely ways we could go about doing it better than we do. I mean, there are ways we can reform it and should reform it, but I don't think it's I don't think it's I would say it's really corrupt. Um, oh, good night, Sarah. Thanks for stopping by as always. Um, I think it's corrupt. I'll say this. I think it is open to corruption. I think it's corruptible, but to just write the whole thing off and say, "Oh, it's corrupt," I don't think that's warranted. Kirak 2011, thank you for the super chat again, my friend. It says I do highly recommend The Practice to you. It's available on Hulu. I might add that to my watch list. No promises when I'll actually get to watch it because there's a bunch of stuff I need to watch that I haven't watched yet. But I remember when it was on, it looked interesting, and I am a fan of David E. Kelly. Like I think he's a good writer, and I've enjoyed other shows of his that I've watched. So I might try to make a point to check it out. John Burns with another super chat says, in Martin Scorsese's Casino, the owner has a problem with the number of blueberries in the muffins in the casino. This actually occurred, so Scorsese had to put it in. Star Wars had no template. Well, I mean, there's a couple of points there. Um, just because it actually occurred doesn't mean Scorsese had to put it in. You could still, I mean, I don't think the blueberries bit was necessarily a big detriment to Casino, but like, if the blueberries bit was something that everybody hated about Casino, that was a shitty scene, and Scorsese said, but it actually happened, I had to put it in. That to me, that's not a good excuse. You're making a movie, just take it out. Just who cares? There's lots of stuff that really happened that you didn't put in. The movie's not a real time recreation of everything that happened in people's lives. Like you're making choices as a creator, so you don't have to put anything in. Um, and also, Star Wars had lots of templates. Actually, Star Wars, the most obvious template for Star Wars was the Kurosawa film, The Hidden Fortress. But there was also the Flash Gordon serials, various westerns, pulp adventure, pulp sci-fi. Like there were lots of templates for Star Wars. Maybe not one single template, except arguably the Hidden Fortress. Um, but it departs from the Hidden Fortress quite a bit too. So even that, I don't know if you necessarily say that was the template, but it's the closest of any single template that it had, I think. But yeah, Star Wars had quite a few templates. um, Alberto, I have not only do I not have multiple DUIs, I have no DUIs. I have never had a DUI in my life. What do you think of that? Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Um, All right, so I'm going to start wrapping this up here in a few minutes. So, if anybody has any final questions or any final comments or any final super chats or whatever, please get them in now because I'm gonna end the show here in a few minutes and go. I don't know, maybe have a snack before wrestling starts in a couple hours, or just relax and not do anything. That sounds fun too. Um, your pony died says if you removed the Gungans and young Anakin, is Phantom Menace the best prequel movie? Duel of the Fates is untouchable. It's still a really shitty movie. I mean, the lightsaber duel is great. I'll agree with you that the lightsaber duel between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul is fantastic. That's literally the only part of the movie that is any good to me. So, I mean, if you took out everything else and you just had like, a 10-minute lightsaber duel between characters that are basically just action figures at that point, then I mean, it would be better. Yeah, I don't think I would necessarily call it a good movie, but it would be better. I mean, picking the best prequel, I don't know. Like picking the best prequel is like picking like who's the best serial killer? Like what does that even mean? What's the meaning of that in this context? Um I think episode 3 was probably the best prequel, but I mean, that means nothing cuz episode 3 is dog shit. Episode 3 is horrible. It's just not as horrible as episode 1 or 2. So, you know. Um, Super chat from John Burns who says it showed an idiosyncrasy about the owner. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with putting it in. There's nothing wrong with having it there. Um, it's just, you know, it doesn't have to be there just because it really happened. Donna Paluga, thoughts on Captain Carter? I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun episode. Um, yeah, I liked it, and I liked the second episode too with T'Challa as Star Lord. I thought that was a good one too. I think that one might even have been a little better than the first one. But I've enjoyed both episodes of What If so far. I thought Captain Carter was awesome. I thought Captain Carter was terrific. CMAC, exactly. Well, why shouldn't I be proud of never having a DUI? I mean, yeah, okay, maybe the bar is a little low, but I cleared that fucker, didn't I? Come on. Oh boy. Homebody, I'm glad you were able to catch some of it too. Oh, you now go back to the deer hunter and knitting. That sounds like a lovely evening. um Alberto Valencia says my favorite pizza topping is red onion. No, it's not, but I would not be ashamed of that because I like red onions and I do get red onions on my pizza. It's not my favorite topping, but I do get them. I do like onions on pizza, and I like red onions. So there you go. I like a nice slice of raw red onion on a burger too. Oh boy, delicious. And I also sometimes I'll dice red onion and I'll put it in. I don't really do tuna salad anymore because I'm a vegetarian, but I do a like a vegetarian version of tuna salad with chickpeas, and you crumple up some what's the nuri, the seaweed sheets that you wrap sushi in. You crumple up some of those to give it a little bit of a fishy flavor, and mix that up with like some mayo and mustard, and do it up like you would do tuna salad. And I like to put in some diced celery and some diced raw red tomato. Delicious, and also some olives. You take some olives and cut them up into little, like quarter them maybe, slice them up real thin or into little chunks, put some olives in there. Oh, Jesus Christ. Now you're talking. Now you're talking. So yeah, you're not going to shame me about liking red onions. I love red onions. Um, well, some random geek, that is a very good reason for not having a DUI. You don't drive, then your record is spotless. Congratulations. 2 to 5 AD says, my hope is that green tech gets cheap enough for neoliberal governments to support shitty versions of the Green New Deal. Think plausible? Yes, I do, and that's kind of what I hope happens. I hope. I mean, obviously, I would love it if we would just pass the Green New Deal in one fell swoop, because I support it completely. But if we have to do it piecemeal, and I think that's probably more plausible, then that's what we should do. I'll take that, and keep pushing for more and more and more. But I will take it. I will take incremental progress because it's usually the only kind that we get. And if we keep pushing forward in increments, it's not so bad. We just have to remember that we make our incremental progress and then we say, okay, this is great. Now we have to do the next thing. We can't just stop. We have to keep going. So, yeah. Knit and Crochet Tiger says, my favorite pizza topping is pineapple. And anyone that does not like it, you eat what you want to eat, and I'll eat what I damn well want to eat. Thank you, Yukon Cornelius. You eat what you like, and I'll eat what I like. I agree with you, by the way, though. Pineapple is good on pizza. Again, not my favorite, but I love pineapple on pizza. It's delicious. So there. Yeah, Deralta Trekkie. I mean, green peppers. I like green peppers. I don't have I enjoy green peppers, but they don't have quite as much bite or flavor as other kinds of peppers. So I'm kind of there with you on that. So yeah, 255 AD. That was the last question. I can go now. Thank you very much. I'll acknowledge just one last super chat from John, who says, "Excuse me, Mr. Shives, but on episode 15 of season 6 of the Ensign's Log podcast, your comment about the Gungans made no sense. Plus, Spock should have come down the corridor. Why Martin put muffins in?" I thank you for the super chat. Thank you for everybody who's been generous with super chats tonight. I really appreciate it. But yeah, we did an episode of the Ensign's Log where we kind of made fun of those kind of fans. We did an episode where our characters met people who had been listening to the podcast, and they were like those sort of nitpicky, like super fans. And that was such a fun episode to do. But so far, fingers crossed, so far we've been lucky that we haven't really attracted those kinds of fans to our show. I think most people who listen to our show for any length of time get that it's not really that kind of show. And we try to keep our stuff straight. Like we try to keep our continuity in the show straight and not contradict ourselves. And we try to match the continuity of the Star Trek show that we're sort of riffing on as close as we can. But we're not that uptight about it. And, if we slip up here and there, it's, Jason a little bit less so than I think, but we both adhere to the Mystery Science Theater credo of just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax. That's, for me, that's very much a guiding principle. And, so fortunately we are in that. We don't really attract fans like that, but that's funny. All right. See, Mac, it feels great to be wrong. If I had a piece of pizza with some pineapple on it, it would feel absolutely spectacular. So anyway, Stephen, thank you very much for being a member. I see, but I disagree with you. I don't. It's a you eat what you want, and I'll eat what I want type of deal. If you don't want onions on pizza, I would never dream of expecting you to eat them. But I love onions on pizza. All right. So anyway, that's it, everybody. Thank you all so very much for watching. Don't forget the charity links in the description. I see Some Random Geek has been putting the links up in the live chat. Charitylinks.page. Go there and help out some of our friends who need some financial support. I would really appreciate it. Geek would appreciate it. And of course, anybody you choose to help would appreciate it, I'm sure. If you enjoy my work here, you can support this channel by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or by clicking the join button and becoming a channel member. I could not do this without support from my viewers. So if you are a patron or a member, thank you very much. I appreciate you so much. If you are not, but you enjoy what I do on YouTube, if you're watching this right now and you've had a good time and you can afford $1 a month or $5 a month or whatever to help me continue to do this, I would ask you to do that. And I would really appreciate it. I mean, don't take food out of your mouth. Don't take food off the table. But if you can afford an extra buck or $2 or $5 or $10 or whatever you can afford a month, that would be fantastic. I would really appreciate it. And you can do that either by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives or clicking the join button. Both are good. Both help. I really appreciate all the support from all my viewers in all forms that it takes, and particularly people who support the channel through a monthly donation. So thank you all very much. Also, don't forget that in addition to the YouTube thing, I co-host a couple of podcasts, the Let Me Listen podcasts, and I am a co-host on Late Seating, which is a movie review podcast where we review classic films and decide whether or not they deserve the reputation that they have. That's with me and Jason Harding. And there's also the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I am on with Jason, and also Dana, who was in the chat with us for a while before she went to bed, where we play characters. It's an improv comedy podcast, and we play low-ranking officers serving aboard at present the Enterprise D, and our episodes take place kind of parallel to episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Our first 3 seasons, we were doing the same gig, but it was opposite or within the world of Star Trek: The Original Series. Now we have jumped ahead to Star Trek TNG, and if you enjoy what I do here on this channel, and specifically if you enjoy the Star Trek stuff, and you just like funny podcasts with funny people, I would encourage you to check out the Ensign's Log. So it's all linked in the description, and you can also listen at letmelistenpodcasts.com. And if you decide to, I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. That's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining me, as always. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. To my fellow wrestling fans, keep your fingers crossed that everything happens tonight that we think is going to happen. Yeah, see you next time, everybody. Take care.